What happens when we die? This is Robert Manni, host of Guys TV, and this week my very special guest is Dimitri Moraitis. He and Barbara Y. Martin have put together a book about what happens in the afterlife. It all starts right here, right now on Guys TV. You can also catch me on Guys Radio on KCAA here in Southern California and my worldwide podcast. Guys TV, Guys Radio. Thanks for your support. Okay, Guys Radio, my favorite portion of the show is when I bring my very best special guests on the air, and I've got a great one today. His name is Dimitri Moraitis. He's the co-founder and co-spiritual director of Spiritual Arts Institute in nearby Encinitas, California. I'm down here, as you know, in San Diego now. He's a metaphysical teacher, healer, co-author of numerous books, and co-creator of course curriculums with Barbara Y. Martin. Their seminal book, Change Your Aura, Change Your Life, along with Communing with the Divine, Karma and Reincarnation, and the Healing Power of Your Aura. And today we're going to discuss Barbara and Dimitri's latest book, Heaven and Your Spiritual Evolution, A Mystic Guides to the Afterlife and Reaching Your Highest Potential. So it's heavy-duty stuff, but we're going to make it fun. The book has been called an exciting, clairvoyant exploration of life in the hereafter and how the divine world supports you here and now. And it's a treasure trove of mystic wisdom. It's a lot of fun. It's a beautiful book. It's out as of October 13th. And welcome back to Guys Radio, Dimitri Moraitis.
Well, hi, Robert. Thank you for having me on your show again. It's a delight.
My pleasure. And you guys did a wonderful job with this book. It's really a beautiful book, and it's got a lot of very, very helpful information, particularly for anybody who's on a path of spiritual unfoldment. It explains things very simply and clearly, and it gives you a lot to think about. And there's a lot of meditations and practices in there that I think anybody can benefit from. So I highly endorse this book, Heaven and Your Spiritual Evolution. So let's get right at it. I'm going to start you out with an easy question. Why are we here? And what is the meaning of life?
Who am I? What is it all about? What's it all about, Alfie? Yeah. Boy, that's a big question. We all ask that, right? We wonder, well, we know why am I here if I'm going to have, let's say, a family, or I want to have this job, or I have a passion to accomplish something. I want to climb Mount Everest, those kinds of things so we have activities and things that we're engaged in. But then when we start to step back and say, well, what's it really all about? And why are we really here? Well, again, you've got a metaphysician on your show. So we take it from the spiritual perspective, and we say the reason we're here is actually spiritual, not physical. The physical is the result of the spiritual activity. And metaphysics would say this is a school. Earth is a school. And like any school, we're here for a certain period of time. We're born, we're going to pass on one day. And the time that we're here is not just random, haphazard experiences, even though sometimes they may feel like that. They're part of a plan, they're part of a design, and they're part of our education. So we would say the point here is to grow spiritually. Okay. We are here as this life to grow.
Perfect answer. I love it. Is the 3D experience that we're going through necessary for our ascension, or do some people, quote unquote, I say people, follow a different path of spiritual unfoldment and soul growth in other places, other galaxies, other dimensions, etc.?
Well, again, that's a massive question. There's a big movement now, even in the scientific community, to say that the universe is alive. The universe has consciousness. And it's not, we tend to think of life as only, organic, you're alive, but not, the earth is not alive and that kind of thing. And so we have to say that the universe really is alive, and it is populated in different dimensions with life evolving and developing and growing. But to go back to your first question, we have to come here in physical life to learn. Because, like that song, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. We have to show that we can accomplish the things with the challenges of physical life here, and that means we've truly learned it. So yes, that means don't run away from the challenges of life, don't run away from the opportunities of life. They're all part of your growing experiences, and what you want is you want to glean the wisdom that the experiences are offering.
Okay. We go through a lot of experiences in life, and then ultimately we pass. What happens when we pass?
Okay, so
Another easy question.
yeah, you go right. So of course the question many ask, is there life beyond the physical veil? Does consciousness die with the body? And metaphysics would say, no, we are not our body. We inhabit a body. The consciousness is inhabiting this body. And when the body does go dust to dust, the consciousness, the soul, will go on. And it will go to what we call the other side, where it will gather up, kind of assimilate the experiences that it got down here, gather more experiences there, and then come for another lap on earth, because we teach in metaphysics that you reincarnate. You really do. You do come back again, like
Okay.
grades in school.
If we are constantly recycling lives, then what is that process, and what are the rules for determining where we're born, either on Earth or someplace else, and how do we determine what we need to learn in each incarnation?
Well, the way to think of it again is a little bit like each incarnation, each life is like a grade in school. So there's an overall curriculum that we have to learn from our first steps into physical life to the time that we, shall we call it, spiritually mature. The East Indian philosophies say, call the reincarnation the cycle of necessity. You have to reincarnate, but then we're trying to get off the wheel. We're trying to get off the reincarnating cycle. And we do that through the process of evolution. So every life is an opportunity to learn different facets. You're learning something in this life. Your previous life, you were bringing maybe other talents and skills. In your future life, you'll be bringing other talents and skills. And eventually you're going to accumulate it all into this beautiful spiritual mastery, spiritual maturity, where you have not just developed one part of your nature, but all parts of your nature.
Are Dimitri, are people rewarded for their good deeds and punished for their bad actions?
Yeah, that's a human thinking. Am I going to get that gold star because I've been so good, or am I going to get the dunce cap because I've not been so smart? The way to think of it more is like attracting like. You are going to receive, shall we say, in the hereafter, what you've earned through the light you've earned, not because you've been good or bad. But the point is, if I'm living just a terrible life, I'm not building up a lot of spiritual power, and I'm not contributing to life. I'm kind of causing problems. So I may not find myself on the other side in such a beautiful place, not because I'm being punished, but because I just haven't earned the energy for that. On the other hand, if I'm living a life of Mother Teresa, an entire always giving, I'm building up a lot of power so that I will find myself on the other side in a more beautiful, not necessarily because she's being rewarded, let's say, but because she earned it. You don't say, am I being good? I'll be a doctor. You have to earn that medical degree, and that's the way it is in spiritual development. You have to earn it.
Okay, so what then is heaven then? Is it an actual place, a state of consciousness, both? And or what are the expectations during our lives at the time of our death? Does that impact what we see when we pass over?
Well, you just said it. It's both.
Okay.
So heaven is a state of consciousness that we actually have to embody here in the physical world. And it's also a literal place to go to. So our theme, it was almost going to be the title of the whole book. You don't go to heaven, you grow to heaven. You evolve there gradually. It's like saying you don't go from kindergarten to your doctorate degree in a year. You still have to go through the stages, but you can have the potential for the doctorate degree. And we do say that all souls are destined for greatness. It's not a matter of if, it's just simply a matter of when. And we're all at a different, like in school, some are in first grade, some are in second, third, fourth, fifth. We're just in different stages of development. There's no judgment. We're all equally precious, but we're not all equally in the same place in the overall plan. And that's the beauty. It kind of creates this chain of life. So we help those that are maybe not as far along as we, and we look up to those that are further along than we are. And it kind of all works together when it's all working together.
Okay. So if time as we know it is not linear, and everything's happening at once, when we die, could we be with our children who are still alive? In other words, how does time work and impact all of this? And I'm not throwing that one at you as a trick question, but
Yeah, no, no.
it's one that's it's like we're a little person, but we're part of a bigger thing. So that's why it's
Exactly.
happening all at once. Is that it?
Not all at once. I would maybe slightly vary that.
Okay.
What metaphysics would say is there is no past or future. There is only the now. God doesn't live in the past. God doesn't live in the future. God lives in the eternal present. So what's happening is the present is unfolding in what we call time, which is duration, and things happening in a sequence of activities. So your soul, my soul, is eternal. It has no beginning or end, but it's unfolding in time because it's learning the process. So now, whether you see your children on the other side, when it's your time to pass, your children are here, you're on the other side. So it's literally like being in two countries. You may be in New York, your children may be in Los Angeles. You're not in the same place, but it doesn't mean you're not both alive and active and all of that. And it doesn't mean that you can't bless your children from the other side, or your children can't pray for you here.
Okay. My special guest on Guys Radio is Dimitri Moraitis, his partner, Barbara Y. Martin. They put together this beautiful book called Heaven and Your Spiritual Evolution, A Mystic's Guide to the Afterlife and Reaching Your Highest Potential. Great conversation here. If everything's happening all at once then, Dimitri, and do we always incarnate into future lives on a graduated scale, or could we potentially go backwards? In other words, okay, we're here in 2010. Could we pass and then you end up in the 1700s?
No,
Okay.
no, that wouldn't happen. But again, like learning, you're hopefully grading. But what does happen, and this is what we do have to be careful of, is, and we share this in our classes, evolution is not always a straight line upward. We hope each life is better than the one before it, but sometimes we do goof it up. And it's more like a stock market graph. It's kind of up and down. If you were to look at the arc of your lives, you would see lives we did marvelous things. And this is for all of us. I'd see lives where I didn't do such great things, but the overall arc is upward. So there can be a downward moment in evolution, but not in time. So, and now there's another thing too. Let's say in the 1700s, I did something that was not so great. Here I am in the 21st century. So I may have to clean up some karma from the 1700s, even though I'm here in the 21st century. And I may even be involved with people that I knew in the 17th century who I owe karma to. And it's a different relationship, but it's the same soul. And we're back together to resolve all of that.
Got it. Okay. And thank you. I said 2010 instead of 2021. That's where my mind is at. But the book is broken up in a really nice way in that there's certain levels. There's the astral level, and then there's heaven. And a lot of people think that heaven is that's the be all end all, but it's not. Apparently there's a celestial level. And within these levels, I mean, first the book seems to start with, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dimitri, that there's some preparation and there's some understanding that we have to go through. And then we get to this astral level, and there's 7 levels there till you get to what is called enlightenment. And we a lot of times think, oh, enlightenment, that's the be all end all, but it's not, because after that, then there's 7 kingdoms of heaven. And after that, there's 7 celestial light kingdoms. How does that all work? And why the number 7?
Well, the first way to think of it, the Bible says, in my Father's house are many mansions. So in the ancient days, they often referred to the heaven worlds as palaces or mansions, almost like places you inhabited, because I guess it was the way of teaching it at that time. But the idea to think of is the other side isn't one place. It's many places. And like you're saying, there are many levels, and there are actual places that you can be. That's not dreamland or fantasy land. It's more real than here. They call this the world of illusion, and the other side, the real world. And it's also geared according to levels of consciousness. So you will find yourself on the other side in an environment with very different people, but of the same more or less vibration. Here it's very different. You could have a very evil soul standing next to a very enlightened soul, and they could be physically in the same room together. That would be less likely on the other side. So it graduates to more refined levels of development. You know, it's like you climb one mountain, you say, oh, wow, how beautiful. Oh my God, there's another mountain. Look at that one. You know, and I find that makes life exciting, because it would be terrible to think that you hit this certain point and you spend eternity on clouds playing harps. I mean, that's going to get dull after a while. I want to know there's more adventures. You know.
Speaking of that, Dimitri, when you're in heaven, I'll put it in quotes because there's different levels of heaven. And for some, we know the earthly plane and the earthly delight. Can you play the guitar? Can you play golf? Can you have sex? Can you whatever? What goes on there? Is it a learning experience? Is it because within the book there's pictures of what looks like these almost like universities of love and knowledge and understanding, and there's a lot of teaching and learning that goes on. And I'm wondering where things that we're used to in this incarnation, do they occur? Can we tap into them? Some people want to drive a sports car. Can they be tooling around in a Lamborghini then, if they're in heaven, because that would be a place where all things are possible whenever they want?
Well, first of all, let me just take a moment about those illustrations. You know, one of the things, and you know, is that the book is based a lot on Barbara's own experiences. Mm-hmm. And we met this wonderful artist who spent basically his life working with, like, Flower Newhouse, who was also a clairvoyant. He had his own intuitive understandings of the other side, to try to depict, again, as much as can be done on a canvas, what the feeling and idea of the inner world is about. And those illustrations, I think, have done a remarkable job of trying to describe something that's very difficult to describe. And what we tried to do in the book, it's like, if you had to draw only 8 pictures of planet Earth, and this is what you were going to tell somebody from another planet what the Earth was like, what 8 pictures would you pick? You know, it would be pretty hard to try to pare it down to that. So what we did is we tried to show the stages of development. So each plane, each dimension of life is a different stage of development. But to answer your initial question, the other side is actually, there are dimensions of the other side, especially in the astral, that are very familiar. It would be very disconcerting if we crossed over to a place that we couldn't relate to. We'd feel so disjointed, we wouldn't be able to function. As a matter of fact, there are dimensions on the other side that are so much like Earth. When people cross over who have no thought of any of this, they don't even think they've died. You say, what do you mean? I'm seeing you, I'm talking to you, you're talking to me. I'm not dead. And when they realize they're not where they think they are, they can go into kind of a shock for a while to adjust to their thinking. So the other thing I would say is, and this is a big point in the book, because somebody say, okay, it's great that we have these worlds, but what about today? I'm not dying today, hopefully. So is this something I should think about when it's my time to cross over? No. Every great idea, every invention, the car, all of that came from inspiration from the inner worlds. The inner worlds are the source of inspiration. So we want to connect with those inner worlds now, because that's where we're getting our ideas. So yes, everything here was first essentially designed there. I'm not saying you're running around in Lamborghinis on the other side, but the idea of the car was created there first. And then the inventors here came up with the idea.
So it's all there out in it's in our field. Everything exists actually in our field. We just have to learn while we're here how to kind of access it and tap into it.
Exactly.
Everything. Okay.
Well, and especially what you need to do. Let's say you have special things, Robert, that you have to accomplish in this life that maybe you prepared for before you began your incarnation. And now you've got to make sure you're tapping those things, because I mean, you and I may not come up with the next theory of relativity, but we're going to come up with something else. But Einstein, that was his part of his mission to bring that through.
Okay, that brings me to another question that I had further down the road, but I want to bring it up now, and that is, you know, there's people that are at different places on their path, And
Right.
there's a lot of people out there that, they're not listening to this show. They're not that interested in what we're talking about. And there's other
Right.
people who are.
Yeah.
And people can go through their lives and not be very circumspect about some of the big pictures. And
Right.
maybe they are more than we think they are. But how does that all work out? Because it seems like, the world we're living in right now, it's very harsh, and maybe people are not thinking big picture the way they might in terms of what else is there. And they're just it's very immediacy. And there's something about living in the now, but also, um, how do we factor in? I mean, did they show up? Did they come into this incarnation to not be tapped into the bigger picture of their soul ascension and living a certain type of life? And what's the purpose of that? If they just go through it, it kind of exists and you pass, and you never think of that stuff. It's like, what do I get? I'll take it. And then you live and then you die. You get sick and you die, versus wondering about how everything works and how can I make this a better world and all of that. How does that all juxtapose?
Well, that's a great question, because it touches on a very fundamental concept. First of all, every soul on earth has the potential for growth, whether they even are thinking of spiritual matters. They could be the hardest core atheist. It's how they're actually living their life and how they're facing the opportunities and challenges of their life. So I may not be thinking metaphysically at all, but if I'm living a good life, if I have ethics, if I have a sense of morality, if I have a sense of integrity, and I live by that, even if I don't use the word spiritual, I'm growing spiritually because I'm living the life, even if I haven't put the tag on it. Now, however, you've hit on a very big thing. We are really in the beginning of what's called the spiritual global renaissance, where people all over the world, not even in one place, are waking up. They're having what we call our spiritual awakening. I had that when I was 25 or something, 24, 25 years old. Before that, I was very much into the artistic, music and movies and all that kind of stuff. That was my career path. I was having what we call these inspiration moments, but I didn't even know what metaphysics was at that time. I wasn't adverse to it. I just didn't know what it was. And when I had my awakening, I call it my Saul on the road to Damascus moment. It was dramatic.
What happened?
Well, again, it's hard to put into words, but it was a fundamental shift in my awareness and understanding of things. I didn't have a tag for it, though. I didn't know what was happening. I knew I wasn't dying or anything like that, but I knew that I just suddenly saw the world differently. Some say, "Oh, you had a religious awakening." I said, "Oh, it's not quite that." But then when I got the metaphysical thing, then I said, "That's it." And then I couldn't stop. A year later, I met Barbara. She became my teacher. But what I'm saying is, and this is the point in the book, if you're listening to this program, for example, because you have had that door knocking on you and I don't know what it is, but I know there's something more, that is the divine knocking on your door. And it means you're supposed to, this is the incarnation where you're supposed to learn about these things and take a more accelerated path in your development. So please, whatever you do, follow through on that intuition, because that is a master key to your life moving forward.
So, Dimitri, how can then people find their kind of soul purpose, what they're here for? Because sometimes, you get a voice in your head and you really listen to it and you learn to trust it. Sometimes it just seems like noise, and then after a while, you get answers very quickly, and the process speeds up.
Right.
But for a lot of people, they're wondering, like, am I just talking to myself? And how do you really connect with your keeper of the threshold and your guardian angels and those entities that are apparently out there helping us all the time? How do we make those connections?
Well,
So
you just kind of said it. You just started to say it's a process. You have to learn to quiet the noise in the head with genuine intuition and inspiration. And you have to think of it as almost like two different radio stations. You have to tune in, and they're not the same vibration. Now, if I really want something, I'm going to listen to myself, right? But if I'm thinking, well, what's the best thing to do, then I may actually start to hear that inner voice and apply it. Now, it does help, and to do what we call meditation and prayer. Your ability, your practice, I should say, of stepping away from life temporarily, active life, and getting into the inner you through the meditative practice helps you to tune in to the inner part of you. And meditation is the foundation of everything that we do. You mentioned the Change Your Aura book. That is the meditation book, Meditate with Divine Light. This book is telling the world now who we are. We're a spiritual growth organization, but we definitely recommend anybody on the path. Meditation and prayer are essential to get more in tune with that inner part of you.
Now, a couple of questions about auras, because Dimitri, you and Barbara Y. Martin put together that wonderful book, Change Your Aura, Change Your Life.
Yeah.
And can you see auras?
I'm learning that skill. I'm learning that skill now. Barbara's the master at it.
Okay.
Now, but I want to say too, and I really want to celebrate her a little bit, because really this is her celebration. You know, she at 3 years old, she started to see energies, and her clairvoyant skills started to open up, but she didn't understand exactly what she was seeing. She said, I knew I was attracted to people who had beautiful colors and energies, and detracted if they didn't. But it wasn't until she was about 11 that she met somebody who could also have these mystic skills, and even told her what the word was. You know, oh, you can see the aura. And Barbara's mouth job is, that's what it's called. You know, this is the Depression era now, we're talking stuff, period, right? And then started teaching her how to interpret. Exactly, you have maybe an emerald green around you. What does that mean? Then wasn't until her 20s that she met another great soul that started to teach her how to become a teacher. So what I say is, she was seeing auras at 3 years old. And by the way, not just little splashes of color, I'm talking about auras. And then at 11, got her first training, again in her 20s, but wasn't teaching to almost her 40s. So it's this very gradual process of not only being clairvoyant, but being a trained clairvoyant. And now you're really asking the question, can you learn it? Because I was not born with the gift of seeing auras, but it is something that can be learned, but it is a byproduct of your spiritual development. So as you're developing yourself spiritually, those mystic talents start to awaken. And yes, Barbara's helping me with that right now, so I can carry the torch. I'm not saying I'm going to be her, but to carry the torch, you know, beyond her tenure. And that's the plan, to keep the tradition going.
Okay, my very special guest, Dimitri Moraitis, the book Heaven and Your Spiritual Evolution. I'm loving this conversation. Dimitri, what are some of the pitfalls that stop people in their spiritual progression? And what's the significance of these pitfalls? And how do you work with white light when spirit or energy beings come to you and you ask? It's kind of a separate question, but work with me on this. You know, when entities show up, we're taught to ask them, do you come from the divine white light? So I guess the pitfalls are connected to these negative energies that are out there. How do we navigate that stuff?
Oh, wow. You're bringing up a section of the book where we talk about the pitfalls of the path.
Yes.
And it's a difficult subject because, look, like anything in life, you know, not everything labeled spiritual is in fact spiritual. There are con people out there. There are false prophets out there. And especially now with the interest blossoming, there are more of those false people out there, and you have to start to discern the difference between the two. Now, again, this is a bit of a test for us. There's a beautiful expression, right? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. So the question is, you have to first start looking at yourself. What is motivating me to do things and seeking all of this out? And if you're sensing there's selfish purposes, you have to start turning that around, because the world of spirit is actually sort of about emptying yourself and serving others and serving the greater good. So if you're just thinking, what am I getting out of this for me? Well, you might attract a false prophet because they know that, and they say, oh, I'll promise you this, I'll promise you that. I can make you a deal that, you know, will be so terrific for you, and you might fall for that. Now, as far as acknowledging presences coming around you, and I'm going to get a little bit technical for a moment.
Okay.
We have our beautiful aura that you mentioned. We have the chakras within the aura, but we have, which often people don't know about, there's another chakra way above the head, almost like 2 feet. And this is not part of our direct aura, but it's connected and it's holding the energy of the divine ones. So what you have to do is you have to reach into that level. And that's where you can start communing with the angels, not so much psychically, but through your own mystical nature. And that takes a little bit of work to do, but it's a beautiful road. And again, I've been on that road a long time, and the presence of the holy ones, as we call them, is absolutely unmistakable. You cannot counterfeit that vibration. Let's put it that way.
So if you meditate on a regular basis and you want to connect with your sentient beings and the keeper of the threshold and your guardian angels and others, what's the best methodology for that? Or is it just meditate and go as you go and learn as you learn?
Well, we have a whole process for that. And again, it's like anything, it takes time to build. So for example, in our meditative practice, we say there are the 6 steps of meditating with divine light. And that starts to, you have to first start building the connection to your own higher nature. Because remember, the divine ones are not, there are enlightened humans on the other side, but when you're talking about the angels and things like that, they're not human. So they don't relate to us on a human level. So we have to get to that place where we're kind of in our own divine nature, and that's the part of us that they can start to connect with. And meditation certainly helps. And by the way, I do want to say this, regardless of your awareness of these divine ones, they help us every day of our life. I love that line in the Talmud. For every blade of grass, there's an angel bending over saying, grow. So we are lovingly supported by the higher right now. It's not if we're supported. What we're trying to do is build a more direct bridge to them. And even the intention that you're describing now helps, because if I start realizing I do have this divine assistance, it's helping me to connect with them rather than saying, oh, come on, it's just fantasy.
Your the soul family, that's a concept I want you to articulate to our audience. What is that? Can we interact with our soul family, or is this just a group of folks that we meet when we're on the other side that are different than, or could be some of the same members that we are dealing with here? Well, what is the soul family? What's the purpose? Can we work with them? Should we work with them? What's it all about?
Well, I think in some ways that term is a little bit misused. And I'm glad you're saying it so we can maybe set the record straight. And again, you're asking some great questions about reincarnation, and I'm happy to dive into that world. But the point is, for example, when you look at your family, your parents or your siblings or the children that you have, you better believe you've known these people in other lives. This is not the first time. And many times we will, not necessarily every single incarnation in sequence, but if you look at a series of incarnations, you will notice, gosh, I've spent a lot of time with certain people. We may have very different relationships. In one lifetime, maybe we're husband and wife, another lifetime, brother and sister, or brother and brother, or whatever. It may vary from life, but it's the same soul. And it does tend to be certain souls, and some have used the term group, but it's not like, oh, we have to go with this group and that's it. No, there's many that we interact with. But if you look at your many lives, you will notice I've had some deep interactions with certain souls over many lives, and that just makes for a more beautiful relationship. Why are some bonds with other people so deep? It goes beyond just this life, and that's a beautiful thing, that we can know each other. Oh yeah, you're the one from the 1400s that I knew from, it's just, you pick up sort of where you left off. And I think that's again, a beautiful thought, because it teaches that no love is lost. I'd hate to think that we have a beautiful relationship with someone, we pass over the other side and we'll never see him again. That's the end of it.
How about those that we may not get along with? Could it be that in other incarnations we didn't get along either, or did they make an agreement with us, like, I'm going to come into this incarnation with you to teach you something by being a royal pain in the rear?
Well, boy, that's another great karma.
So let's factor karma into that. How does that all work? And can you cancel contracts and past karma if
No,
if
no,
you
no.
determine that they no longer align with your highest vibrational frequency and chosen timeline?
Okay, so let's remember now, the design of our life is put into motion by an intelligence greater than ourselves. You go to school on earth to learn things you don't know. That's why you have teachers. If you knew everything, then you wouldn't need to come here. So we don't self-create the life. Now, the point we have to understand here is, and I'll give an example. Let's say somebody really mistreated somebody else in a past life. And the person that was mistreated developed a grudge. And it was never resolved. One of the things we say is never go to your grave with a grudge. That's a sure sign you're back to see each other again. Forgive, forgive, forgive. No matter what the offense, forgive. But if it's unresolved, you're going to come back in a future lifetime together. And that person that was hurt is going to be unconsciously angry with the other person. So they may come across as a bully or a mean person, but ironically, the issue is not them, the issue is you. You created that scenario. And now you're seeing it back in your face again so that you can work it out. So what we're saying is be careful with the challenging relationships. They are your opportunities because you might be facing something you yourself created. Now, I'm not saying every person's like this, but we're talking about the karmic dimension. So when we do this in our classes, it's often, some say, oh, this family member, I can't, they're so mean to me and all this is happening. And how can I be? And when they realize they're the cause of it from another life, their attitude changes. And sometimes they're shocked that the attitude of the other person ends up changing. And there's a tremendous healing that starts to take place.
Let's take that into a practical example. Let's say you have a family member and they're always angry with you. You don't know why. And but you go to your grave and you forgive them, but they don't forgive you. Theoretically, what would happen in the next incarnation?
Well, if we have hurts, again, I'm speaking karmically and not specifically,
Yes.
right? But if I have injured someone and it's not resolved, then I have to keep coming back till it's resolved. Because it's karma is like the balancer. There's something that's unbalanced. And if it's still unbalanced, it's my job because I created it. Again, this is not punishment or reward. This is like, I made this happen. I spilled the milk. I can't just pick up part of the milk. I've got to pick up all the milk that's spilled. But the beauty is you will balance it. And what you want to not do is be reactive, because what happens is we tend to say, oh, I'll never have anything to do with you, when really, you really need to have something to do with them. So the point is, be very, of all the karmas to watch out for, in some ways, watch your relationship ones the most, because it's not easy bringing people together to work things out. And even if it's a little tough, just see that, like you just said before, see that bigger picture, that there is a bigger picture, and that you're learning through all of this. Your soul is learning and growing. And you may be surprised at how things work out.
When you're planning your return to another incarnation, can you, what are some of the factors? I know there's certain lessons to learn, but why can somebody come back as Derek Jeter or Mick Jagger and other people come back as, somebody who cleans out the latrines or whatever? How does, I mean,
well, we've all had those lifetimes of cleaning out the latrines, all right? No one escapes those jobs, all right? Including the Mick Jaggers and the other, okay? So again, if you look at the full picture of it, we have done it all. We've been, the rich, the poor, the smart, the dumb, the woman, the male. We've done it all. We've been all the religion, the religions, all the races of the world. You look at the scope of it. I like to refer to acting in this. I used to do some acting years ago. And, a good actor wants to play a variety of roles because it deepens their skill and understanding of humanity as an actor. If you're always playing the same role, you get a little one-dimensional. So if certain musicians, let's take a Beethoven, he built that over lifetimes. He didn't just come in as Beethoven. Mozart didn't just come in as Mozart. They earned that. through many incarnations. Barbara, you asked Barbara, well, can I be clairvoyant like you? And she would say, yes, but I spent lifetimes building this up. It wasn't just today, in this life. So we come in with the strengths and talents that we've earned from our past things. And that's why not only do you want to work on the blemishes of your life, you want to work on the talents. If you have a natural talent for something, are you ignoring it? Because that didn't just happen. Are you utilizing your skills to the fullness, not just sort of, but to the fullness of it?
How can people, Dimitri, balance the practicalities of dealing with our 3D lives and our obligations versus wanting to work on our spiritual path? Like some people, I was talking to somebody the other day, they weren't sure what they should do. They're not working right now by choice, very highly educated person. And I said, well, what do you want? What's your plan? I don't know. I'm getting all these downloads on different things. And I'm like, okay, cool. But but at a certain point, you have to pay your monthly bill.
Right.
How do people who are on this spiritual path and things start to accelerate, how do they best manage that? Because I think that's happening with a lot of folks now.
Yeah.
They're like, I don't know if I wanted, people are leaving their jobs, people are moving out of the cities, people are saying, this is just nonsense here. How can people, what's the best way for people to navigate all these changes?
Well, I think you're hitting on a very important point. It is a resetting time. It is a changing of the era. It's not just we went through a pandemic. Like you said, it's triggered deeper things, and there's a natural change going on, a reassessment. Is this really what I want to do with my life? And people are thinking, I think that's why some are not jumping back into the workforce right now, because there's a reassessment going on at the moment. And sometimes we have to go through that. But one thing we want to share very clearly to anybody listening here, you don't have an earth life and a spiritual life. They're not separate. You have all of it is spiritual. So your job is part of your spiritual growth. Your relationships are part of spiritual growth. Your finances are part of your spirit. It's all part of the divine life. And when you see it in that light, then you don't have to segment. You don't have to say, no, this is the mundane stuff. I guess I have to do it, and this is the fun stuff that I love to do. You see, it's all part of the grand plan. And then the littlest thing you treat with the same reverence as the most profound thing.
Okay. Last question, Dimitri. How can people best and most effectively surrender to God? It's easy to say, hey, I surrender, and then you keep doing the same things. How can they do that to really make a difference? Because my understanding is from your book and from other spiritual texts I read, that's a very important thing to do. It takes the ego out of the equation, basically. But what's the best advice for how people can do that and not just do it by word, but through deed?
Well, again, you're hitting the nail on the head, because we start with a thought, but until the thought, we start up here, but until it moves down here to the heart, until we're living the truth, you could say, the people that go to church on Sunday and Monday, they're cheating their partners, right? Yeah. So it's lip service, right? It's not really living it. So it goes back to living the laws. It sounds like to living the spiritual life. God is not just out there somewhere. One of the things we say in the book, God is closer than hands and feet. You have a presence of God within you. And you have to start unfolding. And the first place is to truly recognize that God is there. Don't get caught up in institutional ideas, because sometimes let's say people had an upbringing in a certain religion, maybe they had some bad experiences. Well, if that's what God's about, I want to have nothing to do with it. Don't blame people for don't blame God for people's mistakes. You are developing a direct one-on-one relationship with the infinite intelligence that created this entire universe. And that infinite intelligence loves you and is with you already. And like a loving parent, is wanting you to connect with them. So with prayer, that's your petition. That's your God, I know you're there. I may not understand you fully, but teach me. And that you will get a response.
And maybe instead of looking up, we look here inside, because God is within us, right? We don't want that separate.
God is above, I'm looking up to the
around us, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, listen, great chat, and learned so much here. Heaven and Your Spiritual Evolution: A Mystic's Guide to the Afterlife and Reaching Your Highest Potential. The book is by Dimitri Moraitis and Barbara Y. Martin. Okay, final question. I want you to tell everybody where they can learn more about you and Barbara and your teachings, but what does Barbara have to say about what's going on now? And is
Well,
the
first of
outlook
all,
positive?
we have the Spiritual Arts Institute, our nonprofit organization, and like you mentioned, Encinitas, California, but we teach globally via the internet. We've been doing that since 2006, so we were doing video long before the pandemic era. So we've really kind of honed it down. We have classes and workshops. You can go to spiritualarts.org. Again, it's Spiritual Arts Institute. And the reason we created the nonprofit is to give a home for these teachings. They're so encyclopedic, there's so much to learn that it's not just a quick 6-week class. We have programs at various levels, and also just this beautiful community of people. One of the most exciting things of all of this is you're working with other people that are on their journey too. And you're sharing an intimacy that, they say the ties of blood run deep, but the ties of spirit run deeper. And the fellowship is exciting, and it's global, and we do annual retreats and things like that, but we do have this time. As far as the world, I'm glad you're asking that. We do these Golden Chalice Fellowships that specifically talk about topical issues. We know there are a lot of problems in the world, no question about it. But as the higher would share countless times, don't fall into the gloom and doom scenario. The world is getting better, not worse. If you compare the world to 100 years ago, even, there's a book out about that right now, and how much things have been improved in 100 years. We are doing much better. Is there more to do? You better believe it, there's more to do. But let's keep things in perspective, because if you think it's all falling apart, you're less motivated to do something. But when you think, oh, like Gandhi said, I can be the change in the world that I seek, then you're going to be more motivated to do something. So focus on the things that are happening, that are improving and making things work. And when you see problems, pray for it, or if there's something you can do to change it, be the change instead of just complaining about it.
I love it. Okay, Dimitri Moraitis, thank you so much for coming back to Guys Radio. Fantastic chat. God bless you, and keep doing the great work. Say hello to Barbara. I've never met her, but I love what she's doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robert. It's always a pleasure. You really prepared this extremely well.
That's what we do here on Guys Radio. All right, Dimitri, thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
If you're enjoying the content and the guests I bring you each and every week to Guys Radio on TV, please subscribe to our channels. Thanks for your support.